That day, I received a strange call informing me that my 6-year-old niece had been abandoned at a gas station, trembling and begging me to come pick her up. I officially became her only anchor, raising her in place of my deceased brother with everything I had. After 9 years, we had built a small, peaceful family, until her biological mother suddenly returned, crying and demanding to take her back. But behind those tears lay a chilling secret. My brother had left something for his daughter that the woman desperately coveted at all costs. My name is Cooper Manning. I'm 36 years old, a long-haul truck driver living a nomadic life between endless roads, where the only companions are the roar of the engine and the crackling of old country music. But the story I'm about to tell isn't about deliveries or lonely nights. It's about a night 9 years ago when I was 27, a night that changed my life forever. That evening it was bitterly cold, the kind of October-autumn chill where your breath turns to white vapor in the air. I was driving my old Peterbilt on Highway 70, hauling a load of lumber from Ohio to Indiana. The road was deserted with only my headlights flickering across the pitch-black pavement, like streaks of light struggling to break through the thick darkness. The radio in the cab was looping Sweet Home Alabama, but I was too distracted to care. My eyelids were heavy, exhausted after 10 straight hours behind the wheel. I took a sip of Red Bull, its bitter taste burning down my throat, trying to stay alert while calculating how long it would take to reach the nearest rest stop for a quick nap. Highway 70 at night is a different world. It's eerily quiet, with only the steady hum of tires on the road and the whistle of wind through the cracked window. Occasionally, an oncoming truck would flash by, its blinding headlights forcing me to squint. I liked the solitude of these night drives. They gave me time to think, to escape the noise of everyday life. Half dozing, my phone suddenly buzzed in my jacket pocket, shattering the silence. I glanced at the screen, a strange number, an unfamiliar area code. Frowning, I figured it was probably some persistent telemarketer or a wrong number. But a strange gut feeling, like an invisible whisper in my ear, urged me to answer. I pressed the button, my voice curt from exhaustion. "Hello, who's this?" A woman's voice came through, hoarse and urgent, as if she was struggling to hold back her emotions. "Cooper Manning? Are you Joan's uncle?" My heart pounded as if someone had just squeezed it tight. Joan, my niece. She was only 6, the daughter of my brother, Benjamin. Just hearing her name made my blood run cold. "Yeah, that's me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, but my hands were already trembling, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "What's wrong with Joan? Who's this?" The woman took a deep breath as if searching for the right words. "I'm an employee at the Quick Stop gas station on Highway 70 near the old intersection. Joan, she's here. She said she wants you to come get her. Can you come? She doesn't look okay." My mind spun as if I'd been punched in the face. Joan? At a gas station? Alone? In the middle of the night? "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice rising with panic. "How could Joan be there? She's supposed to be with her mother. Are you sure you've got the right kid?" "I don't know," the woman replied, her voice shaky with concern. "She just gave me your name, said you're her uncle." She's sitting in a corner of the station, clutching a torn backpack, looking terrified. "Please come quickly, okay? I can't keep her here for long." I don't remember what I said next. I probably mumbled something, then hung up, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I floored the gas pedal and the truck roared, tearing through the night like a wounded animal. The gas station was about 15 miles away, but every second felt like an eternity. My mind was a chaotic mess of emotions: shock, worry, anger, and a nameless fear. Joan, out there somewhere, alone in the freezing night. What the hell was going on? I drove faster than I should have, but the highway seemed to stretch on endlessly, each curve and mile dragging on as if deliberately slowing me down. The wind howled through the window, icy and sharp, a reminder that Joan was out there in that cold with no one to protect her. I flipped on the hazard lights, swerving into the oncoming lane to pass a sluggish truck, ignoring the blaring horns behind me. I didn't care. I just needed to get to Joan. I just needed to know she was safe. In my mind, Joan's image was vivid. Her big eyes, her messy brown hair, and that shy smile that made anyone want to pull her into a hug. The last time I saw her was a few months ago when I stopped by her mother Lauren's house to give her a birthday gift. I'd spent hours in a store picking out a small doll, something I thought she'd like. Joan hugged me tightly, whispering, "Uncle Cooper, I miss you." Her voice was so soft, as if she was afraid someone might overhear. I'd promised to come back soon, but work swept me away. Endless deliveries and nights sleeping in the cab made me forget that promise. Thinking back now, I felt like a failure. I'd left her alone for too long. I called Lauren immediately, my hands shaking so much I nearly dropped the phone again. The phone rang 3 times, each beep like a knife stabbing into my chest. Finally, she answered, her voice cold as ice. "What is it, Cooper?" "Lauren, what the hell is going on?" I yelled into the phone, unable to hold back. "I just got a call from a gas station. They said Joan's there, alone. Explain this to me." There was a moment of silence, then Lauren sighed, as if I was bothering her. "Yeah, she ran away. I don't know. She's disobedient, always causing trouble. If you can handle her, go ahead, I'm done." I was stunned, unable to believe my ears. "What did you say?" My voice cracked, trembling with rage. "Joan's 6 years old. 6! Do you understand? You're her mother and you're talking like she's a burden. Where are you?" "Don't yell at me," Lauren snapped, her voice sharp and cold. "I'm at home. Noah and I are busy. If you want to play the hero, be my guest. I don't care anymore." Then she hung up, leaving me with the dry, echoing beep in my ears. I wanted to smash the phone, to scream, but there was no time. I pressed the gas pedal harder, the truck shaking as if it might fall apart. The highway stretched out before me, my headlights illuminating the faint white lines on the road. With every mile, a storm was brewing inside me. I tried to push the painful thoughts away, focusing on the road ahead. But Joan's image haunted me, her big eyes, her messy hair, and that shy smile I loved so much. I wondered what she was thinking, how scared she must be. She was probably staring into the darkness, hoping I'd come, hoping someone would save her from the fear surrounding her. I knew Joan was sensitive, easily hurt. When she was younger, every time she heard thunder, she'd run to me or Benjamin, whispering, "I'm scared." Now, without me, without her father, what was she facing? Who had done something to make a 6-year-old run away to a gas station in the middle of the night? A bad feeling clung to me like a shadow lurking in the darkness. I thought of Lauren, of her new husband, Noah. I'd only met Noah a few times, but each time gave me chills. He had a shifty look, a slick voice, and a way of talking that felt like he was always hiding something. Once when I visited Joan, I caught Noah looking at her in a way that made my skin crawl. Finally, the neon lights of the quick-stop gas station appeared in the distance, flickering like an oasis in the desert. The sign blinked in the darkness, both inviting and ominous. I pulled into the parking lot, braking so hard the tires screeched on the pavement. I jumped out, not bothering to lock the door, and ran inside. Inside the gas station, the air was thick with the smell of oil and burnt coffee. A woman behind the counter, probably the one who called me, looked at me with worried eyes. "Are you Cooper?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent. "Yeah, that's me." "Where's Joan?" I nearly shouted, my eyes scanning the small room. A few customers near the coffee machine glanced at me, but I didn't care. She pointed to a corner of the room. "Over there." She wouldn't come inside, just stayed out there. I ran to the back door, my heart pounding. And then I saw her. Joan, tiny and curled up in a thin jacket, sitting on the curb next to a trash can. She was clutching a tattered backpack, her head bowed, her messy hair covering most of her face. Seeing her like that felt like a vice gripping my heart. I knelt down, speaking as gently as I could. "Joan?" "Joan, it's Uncle Cooper." She looked up, her eyes red and brimming with tears. "Uncle Cooper?" Her voice trembled as if she couldn't believe I was really there. Then, like a dam breaking, Joan threw herself into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I held her tightly, feeling her small body shake with cold and fear. I stroked her hair, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay. I'm here now. You're safe." But inside, a storm was raging. I looked at her tattered backpack, her dirty shoes, and I knew for certain that something terrible had happened. I carried Joan to the truck, her weight so light it broke my heart. I brought her inside, turned on the heater, and wrapped her in a blanket from the back. "Stay here, okay?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'll take care of everything." But as I sat in the driver's seat looking at Joan curled up in the blanket, her eyes still glistening with tears, I knew I was stepping into something much bigger. That night at that cold gas station, I didn't just find Joan. I found a responsibility, a promise, and perhaps a destiny. I started the truck, the engine roaring to life, shattering the stillness of the night. The headlights illuminated the road ahead, but my mind couldn't stray from the tiny girl sitting beside me. Joan clutched the blanket tightly, her head resting against the window, her empty eyes staring out into the darkness. She looked so small, almost swallowed by the passenger seat. I wanted to ask her what had happened, to know why she was at that godforsaken gas station. But seeing her trembling shoulders, I knew now wasn't the time. She needed to feel safe first. Joan, the 6-year-old with big round eyes just like my brother Benjamin Manning. My brother, the man with a radiant smile, had left this world 3 years ago in a tragic car accident. I still remember the day I got the news as if the ground had collapsed beneath me. Benjamin was everything to me. My brother, my friend, and the one who always knew how to make things better. He loved Joan more than anything, calling her his little princess and singing her lullabies every night. When he died, Joan was only 3, too young to fully grasp the pain of losing her father, but old enough to feel the void he left behind. After Benjamin's death, Joan lived with her mother. I had thought Lauren would be strong for her daughter, but I was wrong. Lauren fell apart, drowning in alcohol and long days of despair. Then she remarried so quickly it made me suspicious. Her new husband, Noah, was someone I never liked. I drove toward my place, a tiny apartment on the outskirts, about an hour from the gas station. On the way, I glanced at Joan, trying to find a way to talk to her and ease her fear. "Are you hungry, Joan?" I asked, my voice as gentle as I could manage. "I've got some crackers in the truck, or I can stop somewhere to get you something to eat." She shook her head, saying nothing, just clutching the tattered backpack on her lap. That backpack looked like it had been picked up from somewhere, its corners frayed, the zipper half broken. I wondered what was inside, a few clothes, a toy, or just small trinkets she considered treasures. I wanted to ask, but I was afraid of upsetting her. When we got to my place, I carried Joan inside. My apartment was nothing special. A small living room with an old couch, a messy kitchen with a few cans of beer and instant noodles, and a cramped bedroom. I set Joan down on the couch, wrapping another blanket around her. "Wait here a sec, okay?" I said, then went to the kitchen to rummage around. I found a box of pasta and a jar of tomato sauce, the only thing in the house that could pass for food. I cooked some pasta, trying to make it as decent as possible, though I was no chef. Joan ate slowly, taking tiny bites, as if afraid someone might snatch the plate away. Watching her, my heart tightened. I sat across from her, trying to smile. "Is it good, princess?" I called her the name Benjamin used to use, hoping it would make her feel safer. Joan looked up, her eyes still red. Then, like a dam bursting, she started to cry. Small, pained sobs, as if all the fear and hurt she'd been holding back were pouring out. Mom yells at me all the time," she whispered, her voice trembling. "She says I'm a burden, that she doesn't want me anymore. And Uncle Noah." She stopped, her small hands gripping the edge of the blanket tightly, as if just saying his name scared her. I felt my blood boil, but I kept my voice gentle. "What did Noah do to you? Can you tell me, Joan?" She lowered her head, her hair covering her face. He yells at me once. He hit me. Her voice was so quiet I had to strain to hear it. I'm scared, Uncle Cooper. I don't want to go back there. I froze. Hit her? Abuse? A 6-year-old? I wanted to race to Lauren's house, bang on the door, and confront her and that bastard Noah. But looking at Joan, I knew I couldn't let my emotions take over. She needed me, needed a safe place. I stood up, knelt in front of her, and took her small, cold hands in mine. Listen to me. You're staying with me, okay? I won't let anyone hurt you again, I promise. Joan looked at me, her eyes glistening with tears, then nodded. I took her to the bathroom, grabbing a clean towel and warm water to wipe her face. I found an old t-shirt of mine, far too big for her tiny frame, but at least it was clean and warm. I spread a blanket on the couch, adding pillows for her to sleep on. Joan lay down, still clutching her backpack, as if it were the only thing she had left in the world. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor beside the couch, watching Joan drift into sleep. Her steady breathing was the only sound in the quiet room. But in my mind, old memories flooded back, like a slow-motion film. I remembered when Joan was a baby, 1 or 2 years old, when Benjamin was still alive. He'd hoist her onto his shoulders, running around the yard, laughing loudly as she squealed with delight. Once he brought her to my place, letting her play with a stray cat I'd taken in. Joan called the cat Mew Mew and giggled when it licked her hand. I remembered the way Benjamin looked at her, full of love, full of pride. "Coop," he'd said once, "if anything happens to me, you'll take care of Joan, right?" I'd laughed, telling him not to jinx himself. But now those words felt like a curse haunting me. I looked at Joan, sleeping soundly but still frowning, as if even in her dreams she was running from something. I wondered what I'd do next. Me, a truck driver, living alone, clueless about raising a child, now responsible for a 6-year-old. But looking at Joan, I knew there was no turning back. She was family, my blood, the promise I'd failed to keep with Benjamin. I wouldn't fail Joan. That night I sat there, wide awake, my heart full of pity and anger. I swore to myself that no matter what it took, I'd protect Joan, give her a real home. And I knew this journey wouldn't be easy. The next morning, pale sunlight filtered through the window, illuminating Joan's face as she slept soundly on the couch. She looked more peaceful, but she still flinched occasionally, as if the shadows of her past were haunting her dreams. I stood up, my joints creaking after a night curled up on the floor. I brewed a cup of bitter black coffee, the kind I always drank to stay alert, but today it couldn't quell the storm raging inside me. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I left a note for Joan, telling her to keep sleeping and that I'd be back soon. Grabbing my keys, I stepped outside, the cold morning air hitting me like a slap in the face. I drove to Lauren's house, about a 30-minute drive from my apartment. The small house she and Noah lived in sat at the end of a rundown street, its front yard overgrown with weeds and an old rusty pickup truck parked crookedly. Just looking at it made my blood boil. This was where Joan had been living, the place she had to escape from in the middle of the night. I pounded on the door hard enough to make the wooden frame shake. After a moment, Lauren opened it, her hair disheveled, her eyes bleary as if she'd just woken up. She wore an oversized sweater and looked at me with irritation. "Cooper, what are you doing here this early?" she asked, her voice as cold as it had been last night. "Don't play dumb, Lauren," I growled, struggling to contain the anger surging inside me. "Joan's with me. She was alone at a gas station last night. Explain to me why she was there. Why did a 6-year-old have to run away from home?" Lauren crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe as if this wasn't worth her time. "I told you she ran away. She doesn't listen, always causing trouble. You want to know why? Ask her." I stepped closer, just a foot away from her, my voice low but trembling with rage. "She said you yell at her," said Noah hit her. "Do you understand how serious this is? Hitting a child. You're her mother and you let this happen?" At that moment, Noah appeared from inside the house, stepping out to stand beside Lauren. He was tall, wearing a torn t-shirt, his hair a mess, and that look I despised so much. "Hey, buddy, calm down," Noah said, his voice smooth but dripping with arrogance. "The kid's spoiled, doesn't know how to behave. I was just disciplining her a little. Why are you so worked up?" "Disciplining?" I snapped, my fists clenching so tightly my nails dug into my palms. "You call hitting a 6-year-old disciplining? Who the hell do you think you are to lay a hand on my niece?" Lauren cut in, her voice sharp. "Don't stand there acting all high and mighty, Cooper. Do you know how hard it is to raise a kid? She doesn't listen, she ruins everything. I've tried my best, but I can't take it anymore." "Can't take it?" I stared straight into her eyes, my voice shaking with fury. "You're her mother. You don't get to abandon her like that. Benjamin trusted you, and what have you done with her? Left her terrified, forced to run to a gas station in the middle of the night?" Lauren scoffed, a cold, bitter laugh. "Benjamin? Don't bring him into this. He's dead, and I had to move on. You want to play the hero? Fine. She's your burden now. Raise her yourself if you're so great." I stood there, stunned, unable to believe what I was hearing. Lauren, who had sobbed uncontrollably at Benjamin's funeral, who had promised to care for Joan forever, was now standing here calling her daughter a burden. I wanted to scream in her face, to tell her she didn't deserve to be a mother, but I stopped myself. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew arguing with Lauren wouldn't solve anything. Joan needed me, and I couldn't waste time on people like her. Noah stepped forward, pointing a finger in my face. "Listen, buddy. If you want the kid, take her. But don't come back here pointing fingers. We have our own lives, and she doesn't belong here." I looked at Noah, then at Lauren, and the harsh truth hit me. They didn't want Joan. Not because she was bad, not because she caused trouble. They simply didn't want the responsibility. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Fine," I said, my voice cold as ice. "I'll take Joan, and I swear I'll protect her for the rest of my life. But you two, you'll pay for what you've done to her." Lauren shrugged, as if my words carried no weight. She turned back into the house, then returned with an old plastic bag containing a few tattered clothes and a pair of Joan's dirty shoes. "Here," she said, tossing the bag at me. "Her stuff. Take it all. From now on, she's your problem." I caught the bag, feeling something inside me break. Not for Lauren, not for Noah, but for Joan. This 6-year-old girl had been abandoned by her own mother like some worthless object. I turned and walked back to my truck, the bag in my hand heavy with Joan's pain. On the drive back, I didn't say a word, just drove in silence. The image of Joan curled up at the gas station last night replayed in my mind, along with her whispered words about her mother and Noah. From that day on, I knew I had become her only anchor, not just her uncle, but her family, her protector, everything she had left in the world. When I got home, Joan was awake, sitting on the couch, clutching her tattered backpack. She looked at me, her big round eyes full of worry. "Uncle Cooper," she whispered, "is my mom mad at me?" I knelt down in front of her, taking her small hands in mine. "No, princess," I said, forcing a smile despite the pain tearing at my heart. "Your mom's not mad at you. But from now on, you're staying with me. I'll take care of you, okay?" Joan nodded, her eyes brimming with tears, but this time I saw a tiny spark of hope flicker in them. The first days with Joan were a challenge I was utterly unprepared for. My tiny apartment, meant for a single truck driver, now had to become a home for a 6-year-old girl who had endured unspeakable trauma. Joan was quiet, barely speaking beyond short responses. She often curled up on the couch, clutching her tattered backpack like a shield, her eyes staring into the distance. Every night she had nightmares. I'd hear her whimpering in her sleep, calling out "Mommy" or "No, please" in a trembling voice, forcing me to rush to her side, hold her, and whisper that everything would be okay. But I wasn't even sure if that was true. Me, a truck driver used to cooking instant noodles and napping in my cab, now had to learn how to be a father. Those early days, were a clumsy disaster. I still remember one morning when I woke up early trying to make breakfast for Joan. The result was a plate of burnt eggs and a few slices of dry bread. Joan looked at the food, then at me, her big round eyes full of skepticism. "Uncle, are you sure this is edible?" she asked in a tiny voice tinged with mischief. I burst out laughing, the first time since that fateful night, and promised I'd learn to cook properly. Braiding her hair was another fiasco. Joan wanted her hair tied neatly like her classmates, but all I knew was a loose ponytail. The first time I made a mess of it, her hair looking like a bird's nest. Joan looked in the mirror, giggled, and then taught me how to brush and tie it tighter. "You have to be gentle like Mom. Like my teacher at school," she said, her voice faltering when she mentioned Lauren. My heart clenched, but I just nodded, trying to follow her small steps. I started rearranging my life. My job as a long-haul truck driver with its days-long trips was no longer feasible with Joan. I requested shorter routes, even though it meant a significant pay cut. I made calls everywhere, looking for an elementary school near my apartment for Joan. Luckily, a nearby public school agreed to enroll her, though I had to scramble to handle paperwork and convince them I was qualified to be her guardian. Every time I saw Joan in her thin jacket carrying her tattered backpack to school, I told myself I had to do better, to give her the life she deserved. But Joan struggled to fit in. At school, she was shy, often sitting alone during recess, avoiding her classmates. Her teacher told me that Joan sometimes cried when someone inadvertently mentioned mothers or families. In those moments, all I could do was hold her, let her cry in my arms, and wonder if I had the strength to heal the wounds Lauren and Noah had left behind. I decided to turn to my parents, Donald and Rose Manning, who lived on a small farm in rural Ohio, a few hours' drive from my place. One weekend, I took Joan to visit them. My parents' farm was a peaceful haven with sprawling fields of grass, the sound of roosters crowing in the morning, and the smell of freshly baked cookies wafting from the kitchen. My mother, Rose, greeted Joan with a tight hug. My father, Donald, took her to the stables, showing her how to feed the horses and telling her exaggerated stories about his youth. For the first time, I saw Joan smile genuinely, a bright, carefree smile, as she chased a baby chick around the yard. Those visits to my parents became a healing balm for Joan. At the farm, she could run freely, learn to bake with Rose, and listen to Donald's dramatic tales of hunting trips, embellished for effect. Each time we returned to the apartment, I noticed Joan was less withdrawn, less afraid. She started talking more, telling me about the butterflies in Grandma's garden or how Grandpa Donald pretended to get kicked by a horse to make her laugh. One evening, after a trip to the farm, Joan sat next to me on the couch holding a mug of hot cocoa I'd just learned to make. She looked at me, her eyes sparkling, and said, "Uncle Cooper, can I call you Daddy Coop?" I froze, feeling my heart skip a beat. I nodded, trying to hide the tears welling up. "Sure, Princess," I replied, my voice hoarse. "Call me whatever you want as long as it makes you happy." From that day on, Daddy Coop became our special name. Every time Joan called me that, I felt a new strength, as if all the struggles and awkwardness of those early days were worth it. Joan started opening up, sharing her dreams of becoming an artist, of painting the world in vibrant colors. I bought her a box of colored pencils, and soon the living room walls were covered with her drawings, fields, horses, and a man in a baseball cap, who I knew was me. Time passed like a gust of wind. In the blink of an eye, Joan went from a shy little girl to a smart, gentle, and vibrant 15-year-old. The painful memories of her childhood, the harsh words from Lauren, the blows from Noah, gradually faded like ink blurred by sunlight. Joan was now a lively girl, always wearing a radiant smile, though sometimes I could still see a hint of melancholy in her eyes, as if the shadows of her past lingered somewhere deep inside. Watching Joan grow up filled me with pride, as if she were my own daughter. She excelled in school, loved art, and had a knack for storytelling that could make anyone laugh. At school, Joan became the heart of her friend group, always ready to help others, whether it was sharing homework or organizing fundraisers for the school library. But what warmed my heart the most was the way she looked at me, not just as an uncle, but as a father, a hero. Speaking of sacrifices, I gave up plenty. In those early years, I turned down a few romantic relationships even when someone truly made my heart skip a beat. I was afraid that letting someone into my life would make Joan feel unsafe, like she was no longer my top priority. Once a co-worker at the trucking company, Lisa, invited me out for coffee. She was kind, funny, and we could have been something more. But when I saw Joan doing her homework at home, her eyes still holding a trace of distrust toward the world, I knew I wasn't ready. Joan needed me, and I couldn't take that risk. Years later, when Joan was older, I thought I might be able to open my heart. I met Sandra, an art teacher at Joan's school, during a parent-teacher conference. Sandra had a warm smile and kind eyes, and we quickly connected over stories about art and Joan. One evening, after taking Sandra out to dinner, I shared my journey with Joan. I thought she'd understand, that she'd feel the love I had for Joan. But when I mentioned how I'd passed up other opportunities to put Joan first, I saw her hesitate. "Cooper, you're an amazing person," Sandra said, her voice soft but distant. "But I'm not sure I can live in a world where Joan is always the #1 priority." Her words, though gentle, hit me like a punch to the heart. I looked at Sandra, and in that moment I understood. Joan was the center of my world, the reason I woke up every morning. If someone couldn't accept that, they didn't belong in my life. I smiled at Sandra, thanked her for the evening, and we didn't see each other again. When I got home, I found Joan painting a new picture, a field of flowers under moonlight. "Pretty, Daddy Coop?" she asked, her smile radiant. I nodded, my heart at ease. I knew I'd made the right choice. Work was another major challenge. To provide for Joan, I worked double shifts, taking on night runs and long routes I'd previously turned down. Some months, the bills for rent, school, and Joan's supplies drained my bank account. I remember one time when Joan needed new shoes for school, I had to sell an old watch Benjamin had given me to afford them. That night, I sat in the kitchen staring at a pile of bills, feeling so exhausted I wanted to collapse. But then Joan walked in, hugged me from behind, and whispered, "Daddy Coop, thank you for taking care of me. I know it's hard." That one sentence, like a tonic, washed away all my fatigue. Joan's love was the greatest reward. She wasn't just grateful. She found ways to give back in her own way. Last year, for my 35th birthday, Joan gave me a gift I'll never forget. She had secretly worked for months in her school's art class, carving a small wooden statue of me, a man in a baseball cap standing next to a truck with what Joan called Daddy Coop's smile. When I opened the gift box and saw the statue, I broke down in tears. Every summer, Joan and I visited my parents at the farm. Those trips were the most precious times we shared. My father, Donald, taught Joan how to ride a horse, though the first time she fell onto the grass and laughed so hard I had to run over to check on her. My mother, Rose, passed down her apple pie recipe, and soon Joan proudly boasted that her pies were better than Grandma's. Evenings at the farm were spent around a campfire, listening to Dad's stories of his youth or stargazing with Joan. "Daddy Coop, I want to stay here forever," she once said, her head resting on my shoulder. But not everything was smooth. Some days I wondered if I was doing right by Joan, if I was giving her everything she deserved. Once she came home from school with red eyes, saying a classmate had asked about her biological mother. "I didn't know what to say, Daddy Coop," Joan whispered. "I don't want to think about Mom." I hugged her, telling her that a mother isn't just the one who gives birth to you, but the one who loves and stays by your side. Deep down, though, I knew Joan's old wounds had never fully healed. Still, these past 9 years have been the most peaceful of my life. Joan became my light, the reason I got up every morning, the drive to keep pushing forward. Together, we built a home, however small, however challenging, but filled with love. and I knew as long as I had Joan, I was ready to face any hardship. But life, as I've learned, never lets you stay comfortable for too long. One spring afternoon, as Joan came home from school and sat in the living room drawing with her favorite colored pencils, the doorbell rang. I was washing dishes in the kitchen, wiping my hands on an old towel, thinking it was probably a delivery person or a neighbor. I opened the door and there stood Lauren. 9 years had passed, but I recognized her immediately, though time had left its mark on her face. Lauren was thinner, her hair dyed a brassy blonde, but her eyes were still sharp, now glistening with tears. She wore a green coat, clutching a cheap bouquet of flowers and a small gift bag. "Cooper," she said, her voice trembling. I came to apologize." I stood frozen, my hand gripping the doorknob as if I needed it to keep from falling. Lauren, the woman who had thrown out Joan's things like trash, who had called her a burden, was standing at my door with tears and an apology. I couldn't believe it. "What do you want, Lauren?" I asked, my voice dry, unable to hide my suspicion. She took a deep breath, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I know I was wrong, Cooper. I treated Joan terribly, and you too. I've lived a misguided life, but now I want to make amends. I want to see Joan, to start over." I stared at Lauren, searching for sincerity, but all I felt was unease. I wanted to slam the door and tell her to get lost. But a part of me hesitated. I thought of Joan, of the times she cried missing her mother, of the question she asked 9 years ago. Is Mommy mad at me? No matter how awful Lauren had been, she was still Joan's biological mother. If I shut her out, would Joan resent me later? Would she regret not having given her mother a chance? "Wait here," I said coldly, then turned back inside. Joan was sitting on the sofa, looking up as I approached. "Who is it, Daddy Coop?" she asked, her voice curious but tinged with worry. I knelt in front of her, taking her hands, trying to keep my voice gentle. "It's your mom. She wants to see you. Do you want to talk to her? If you don't, I'll tell her to leave." Joan bit her lip, her big round eyes staring at the floor as if wrestling with herself. "Mom, she really wants to see me?" she whispered, her voice full of doubt. I nodded, my heart heavy. Joan was silent for a moment, then said, "I'll see her. But can you stay with me, Daddy Coop?" "Of course, Princess," I replied, squeezing her hand gently. I led Joan to the door, standing right beside her like a protective wall. Lauren looked at Joan, and for a moment I saw her eyes flash. Not quite with love, but with a strange longing that gave me chills. "Joan," Lauren said, her voice soft, almost syrupy. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I was wrong to let you go. I've missed you so much." She knelt down, offering the gift bag to Joan. "I got this for you. Open it." Joan took the bag but didn't open it right away. She looked at Lauren, then at me, her eyes full of caution. "Thank you," she said, her voice small but firm. "But why are you here now?" Lauren hesitated, then forced a strained smile. "I've changed. I want to make it up to you. I want to be part of your life." I stood there, watching Lauren's every move, every glance. I wanted to believe she was genuinely remorseful, but something in her voice and the way she looked at Joan made me distrust her. Joan, though only 15, sensed it too. She kept her distance, not rushing into her mother's arms as other children might have. Instead, she held my hand, as if to reassure herself that I was still there, still her anchor. Lauren stayed for about an hour, telling stories about how she had turned her life around, how she had left Noah and now wanted to focus on Joan. She gave Joan a cheap necklace, promising to visit regularly. Joan nodded, polite but distant, and I knew she wasn't ready to open her heart. When Lauren left, she hugged Joan, but I saw Joan stiffen, not returning the embrace. That night, after Joan went to bed, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the necklace Lauren had left behind. I wondered if I should give Lauren a chance for Joan's sake. But deep down, I knew something was off. Lauren hadn't come back out of love. There was a secret, a motive, and I was determined to find out what it was before it could hurt Joan again. and the answer seemed to come almost immediately. About half an hour later, Joan's bedroom door creaked open. She stepped out, her hair disheveled, clutching a pillow, her big round eyes shimmering with worry. "Daddy Coop," she whispered, "I can't sleep." I stood up, pulling a chair for Joan to sit beside me. "Come here, princess," I said gently. "Want some hot cocoa? Or tell me what's on your mind?" Joan sat down, hugging the pillow tighter, as if she needed something to hold on to. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered so softly I had to lean in to hear. "I remember Mom saying, if it weren't for the $1 million trust fund Dad left, she would have put me in an orphanage." I froze. My heart skipped a beat and the small kitchen suddenly felt suffocating. "What trust fund, Joan?" I asked, my voice hoarse, struggling to stay calm so as not to scare her. "What did your mom say about it?" "When?" Joan bit her lip, her eyes fixed on the floor. "I don't remember exactly. It was a long time ago when I was little. She was talking to Uncle Noah and I overheard. She said Dad left a big trust fund for me, but she didn't want me to know." My blood ran cold. A trust fund? This was the first I'd heard of it. For 9 years I'd worked myself to the bone, driving day and night, even selling Benjamin's watch to provide for Joan, completely unaware of any trust fund. And Lauren, she had hidden it from me, from Joan, for what? Suddenly her return today clicked into place like a perfect puzzle piece. Lauren hadn't come back out of remorse. She came back for the money. I pulled Joan into my arms, hiding the rage boiling inside me. "Thank you for telling me, princess," I said, stroking her hair. "Now go to bed, okay? I'll handle this. No one's going to hurt you." Joan nodded, her eyes still full of worry, but she trusted me. After she returned to her room, I sat there, my mind reeling. I needed answers, and I needed them now. The next morning, I called an old friend, Mike, a lawyer specializing in wills whom I'd known since Benjamin was alive. I briefly explained what Joan had said, and Mike agreed to help me investigate. Over the next few days, I barely slept. I still drove Joan to school, made her clumsy breakfasts, but my mind was consumed by the secret Lauren had kept. Mike worked quickly, contacting banks and law offices that had dealt with Benjamin. Finally, the truth came to light, clear and brutal as a knife to the heart. Before his death, Benjamin had set up a $1 million trust fund for Joan, managed by a reputable bank. The terms were clear. Joan would gain full control of the funds when she turned 18. Until then, the bank acted as trustee, ensuring the money was preserved and untouchable, not even by Lauren. Benjamin had created the fund to secure Joan's future, but he never told me, perhaps because he believed Lauren would care for her properly. I was stunned, sitting in Mike's small office, staring at the documents in front of me. For 9 years, I'd lived frugally, working myself to exhaustion, while Lauren knew about this fund and kept it hidden. She hadn't just abandoned Joan. She'd kept her like a bargaining chip, waiting for the day she could manipulate that money. And now, with Joan just 3 years away from turning 18, Lauren had returned with crocodile tears and empty promises. I gripped the trust fund agreement tightly, a mix of anger and pain coursing through me. Benjamin had done everything to protect Joan, but Lauren, the woman he once loved, had turned that love into a selfish game. I thought of Joan, of the wary look in her eyes when she saw Lauren, and I knew I had to act. Lauren would not get near Joan again, would not hurt her again. I returned home, my heart heavy but resolute. Joan was drawing as she did every day, but this time her picture was dark. Chaotic lines, unlike her usual bright sketches. "Daddy Coop," she said when she saw me. "Mom won't take me away, will she?" I knelt down, took her hands, and looked straight into her eyes. "No, princess," I said firmly. "I won't let anyone take you away. I promise." A few days later, I arranged to meet Lauren at a small cafe near my house. I chose a public place to keep things under control, knowing this conversation wouldn't be easy. Lauren arrived late, striding in with confidence, wearing a tight red dress and sunglasses covering half her face. She sat down across from me, offering a forced smile. "Cooper, I'm glad you wanted to talk," she began, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I really want to start over with Joan." I looked straight into Lauren's eyes, giving her no chance to dodge. "Stop pretending, Lauren," I said, my voice ice cold. "I know about the trust fund. The $1 million Benjamin left for Joan. You came back for the money, didn't you?" The smile on Lauren's lips froze. She blinked, hesitated, then let out a laugh, but it was dry and unnatural. "Trust fund. Oh, Cooper, you think so poorly of me. I came back for Joan because I regret what I did. You think I'm the kind of person who only cares about money?" I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp. "Don't lie. Joan told me what you said, that if it weren't for the money, you would have put her in an orphanage. For 9 years, you didn't check on her. Not a single call, not a single letter. Now, when she's almost 18, you suddenly show up with tears and gifts. Do you think I'm stupid enough to believe you?" Lauren's brow furrowed, her eyes flashing with anger. She ripped off her sunglasses, tossing them onto the table, and for the first time I saw her true face. No more crocodile tears, no more sugary voice. "Fine, Cooper," she snapped. "If you know about the trust, I don't need to pretend anymore. Joan is my daughter. I have rights to her, and I'll take them back. That money in the trust belongs to me because I'm her mother." I clenched my fists under the table, fighting to contain the rage boiling inside. "You abandoned Joan. You threw her things out like garbage, called her a burden. Now you want to come back not for her, but for the money? You don't deserve to be her mother." Lauren shot to her feet, pointing at my face. "You have no right to judge me, Cooper. Joan is my daughter, and I'll take her back. If you don't agree, we'll see each other in court. I'll hire a lawyer and I'll get custody. You're just a truck driver. Do you think you can fight me?" I stood up, meeting her gaze, my voice calm but resolute. "You want to sue? Fine. But I swear, Lauren, I'll fight to the end to protect Joan. You'll never touch a single hair on her head. Or her money." Lauren smirked, turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving me standing there with a storm raging in my chest. I knew she wasn't bluffing. Lauren would hire a lawyer and do whatever it took to gain control of Joan's trust fund. But I wasn't bluffing either. Joan wasn't just my niece. She was my daughter, my light, the promise I'd made to Benjamin. I wouldn't let Lauren take her away, no matter the cost. When I got home, Joan was doing homework at the kitchen table, looking up as I walked in. "Daddy Coop, why do you look so tense?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. I sat down beside her, taking her hand. "I just met with your mom. She wants you to live with her," I said, choosing my words carefully. But I said no. "You're my family, and I'll do everything to keep you here. You trust me, right?" Joan nodded. "I trust you, Daddy Coop," she whispered, then hugged me tightly. That night, I contacted Mike, my lawyer, and began preparing for the legal battle ahead. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Lauren had money, lawyers, and the audacity of someone who would stop at nothing. But I had Joan, her love, and my promise to Benjamin. I would fight not just for the trust fund, but for Joan's future. Mike introduced me to Ellen Carter, a seasoned family law attorney who had handled dozens of custody disputes. Ellen was petite but had sharp eyes and a calm, authoritative voice. When I recounted the entire story, from the fateful night at the gas station to the years I raised Joan and Lauren's calculated return, Ellen nodded, taking meticulous notes. "We have a strong case," she said, "but we need to prepare thoroughly. Lauren won't give up easily, especially with that kind of money involved." Ellen and I set to work gathering evidence. First, we needed Joan's testimony. I was hesitant to ask her, afraid that revisiting the past would hurt her. One evening, I sat with Joan on the sofa, keeping my voice gentle. "Princess, I need you to tell me about what happened when you lived with your mom and Noah. I know it's hard, but this will help us keep you here with me." Joan bit her lip, her hands clutching the hem of her shirt. "I'm not scared of them anymore, Daddy Coop," she whispered. If talking about the bad times helps me stay with you, I'll do it." I hugged her, feeling the strength and maturity of a 15-year-old girl. When Ellen visited our home, Joan recounted those dark days, how Lauren berated her, called her a burden, how Noah yelled in her face or raised his hand when she spilled a glass of water. Joan's story, though told calmly, tore at my heart. Ellen recorded it, her eyes flashing with anger but also determination. Next, we contacted Child Protective Services, CPS. Fortunately, Joan's abandonment at the gas station years ago had been documented, though no formal charges were filed since I took her in immediately. The CPS record was powerful evidence of Lauren's failure as a mother. I also returned to the Quick Stop gas station, tracking down the woman who had called me that night. Now the station manager, she vividly remembered Joan shivering by the trash cans and agreed to testify. Additionally, Ellen found a former neighbor of Lauren's who had witnessed Noah's abuse and overheard Lauren's cruel words to Joan. On the court date, I wore my only worn-out suit, feeling like a truck driver out of place in the world of law. Joan sat beside me dressed in a simple green dress, her hair neatly braided, by me after years of practice. She held my hand, her fingers cold but her gaze steady. "I'm not scared, Daddy Coop," she whispered. "I know you'll protect me." In the courtroom, Lauren appeared transformed. She wore a long gray dress, her hair pinned up, her eyes glistening with tears, looking like the embodiment of remorse. Before the judge, she spun a carefully crafted story. That she had made mistakes after losing her husband, that she had changed, left Noah, and now only wanted to be a good mother to Joan. "I know I was wrong to abandon her," Lauren said, her voice choking, tears streaming down her cheeks. "But I'm Joan's biological mother. I deserve a chance to make it right." I stared at her, my blood boiling. Ellen placed a hand on my shoulder, whispering, "Stay calm, Cooper. Let me handle this." And she did, as promised. Ellen presented the evidence with clarity and precision. The CPS report was submitted detailing how Lauren had abandoned Joan at the gas station when she was just 6. The gas station manager's testimony described Joan trembling, clutching a tattered backpack, silencing the courtroom. Lauren's former neighbor recounted hearing Joan's cries and Lauren's vicious words. But the decisive moment came when Joan took the witness stand. In her green dress, her voice trembled but remained clear. "My mom doesn't love me," Joan said, looking directly at Lauren. "She called me a burden, said I ruined her life. Noah hit me and she didn't stop him. Daddy Coop saved me, gave me a family. I want to stay with Daddy Coop because he loves me for real." Her voice broke at the end, her eyes red, but she stood tall, like a little warrior. Lauren sat there, her face pale, her facade crumbling. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern gaze, looked at Lauren as if seeing through every lie. After a week of deliberation, the verdict came. I remained Joan's legal guardian. Lauren had no rights to her, and the trust fund would stay protected until Joan turned 18. As we left the courtroom, I hugged Joan tightly, feeling like we'd just weathered a storm. "You did so well, Princess," I whispered. Joan smiled, her first smile in days, and gripped my hand tightly. Lauren stood in a corner of the room silent, then turned and walked away. I didn't know what she'd do next, but I knew one thing. She was no longer a threat. We stepped out of the courthouse, the gentle spring sunlight streaming down as if to soothe the tense months we'd just endured. Joan lifted her head, taking a deep breath, and I saw her eyes shine, as if an invisible burden had been lifted. I knelt down, pulling her into my arms, whispering, "You're safe now, Princess. I'll never let anyone take you away again. I promise." Joan hugged me tightly, saying nothing, but her embrace spoke volumes. Trust, love, and the home we had built together. Lauren, after the trial, became the subject of scorn. News of the case spread not just in our small town, but through stories circulating on social media. People called her the cruel mother, the woman who abandoned her daughter for money and returned only to fight for the trust fund. Old neighbors, friends, even those who once knew Lauren turned their backs on her. She lost everything. Not just custody of Joan, but the last shred of her dignity. I didn't know where Lauren went after that, and I didn't care. She had chosen her path, and Joan was no longer part of her world. A few weeks after the trial, Joan and I returned to our normal routine. She went back to school, continued drawing vibrant pictures, and dreamed of becoming an artist. One evening, as we sat down to dinner, a spaghetti meal I'd finally learned to cook decently, Joan suddenly put down her fork, looking at me with a serious expression. "Daddy Coop," she said, "when I turn 18, I'll get the money from Dad's trust fund, right?" I nodded, unsure where she was going with this. "Yes, Princess. That's the money your dad left for you to give you a good future." Joan smiled, a smile both mischievous and warm. "I've been thinking. When I get the money, I'm going to buy you a new car. Not that old truck, but a nice one, so you don't have to drive night routes anymore. And I'll buy a new house, a proper one with a garden, so you can plant trees like you used to talk about in your dreams." I was stunned, my hands trembling with an indescribable emotion. I looked at Joan, trying to say something, but my throat tightened. The years of working myself to exhaustion, the sleepless nights worrying about her, the times I put her first over every opportunity, all of it came rushing back, not as a burden, but as a gift. I broke down, crying not from fatigue or sorrow, but from happiness. "You don't need to do that, Joan," I said, my voice hoarse. "All I need is for you to be happy." "But I want to," Joan replied, grasping my hand across the table. "Because you've given me everything, Daddy Coop. I want you to know how much I love you." In that moment, I felt the sacrifices of the past 9 years blossom into something beautiful. Joan wasn't just my niece, not just a responsibility I took on for Benjamin's sake. She was my daughter, my family, my reason for living. We had faced darkness together, built a family from broken pieces, and now we were stronger than ever. I hugged Joan tightly, tears of joy streaming down my face. They were tears for the 9 years we'd endured together, through bitterness and sweetness now bursting forth in this moment. Our journey felt like turning to a new page in a book, a page filled with vibrant colors and the light of hope. Looking back on those 9 years, I realized one thing: family isn't just about blood. It's about love, sacrifice, and the times you choose to stand up for others no matter how harsh life gets. If you're reading this, I have one message: cherish the people you love, fight for them, and never let fear or hardship stop you from doing what's right. Because in the end, what you give with your whole heart will become the light that guides your way, just as Joan has become the light in my life.